Well, 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 if it isn't the usual suspects clamoring for their weekly allotment of news summaries.
Fukushima Daiichi have spent months carrying out a painstaking task. They've been removing nuclear fuel from a damaged reactor building and putting it in storage. But now the people overseeing the operation say they could run out of space, so they've changed their plan. The workers have been moving more than 1,500 units of fuel rods from a pool in the reactor number 4 building. They've been taking the fuel to a common storage pool. Space in the pool is limited, so officials had planned to remove some fuel rods being stored there to make more room. But now they say it's taking more time than expected to confirm if casks for carrying the rods are safe. The officials' new plan is to transfer 180 units of unused fuel rods from the number 4 building to a different reactor building. They say they'll start in November, and they expect to finish removing all the rods by the end of the year as scheduled. The plant's operator will apply to the Nuclear Regulation Authority for approval of the new plan.
Japan's government has decided to provide about $80 million to help evacuees return to their hometowns near the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. Officials at the reconstruction agency have announced that the fund will be given to Fukushima Prefecture and its 16 municipalities. It will be used for designing public rental housing for returning residents, building infrastructure for farming and industrial activities, and other rebuilding projects.
We expect the fund to help speed up rebuilding efforts in evacuation areas.
The central government has earmarked about $1.6 billion to help municipalities prepare for the return of residents after evacuation orders are lifted. In April, the government lifted an evacuation order on a district near the plant for the first time after the nuclear accident in March 2011. It had decontaminated the area to bring down radiation levels. Decontamination work has produced a large amount of contaminated soil and debris. The Japanese government hopes to build temporary facilities in Fukushima to store it. Environment Minister Nobuteru Ishihara upset residents on Monday when speaking about the plan. He said money would be the deciding factor on what happens to the waste.
The love of money is the root of all evil.
Ishihara clarified his comments the next day. He said the key issue is compensation for land and aid to rebuild lives and local economies.
We felt that putting our users in mortal danger for a quick buck was the right move.
I'm sincerely sorry for causing any misunderstanding.
The minister says he hasn't changed his approach of supporting residents and making sure they understand the current plan. But Fukushima Governor Yuhei Sato has expressed displeasure over Ishihara's remarks.
I wonder whether the minister truly understands how much the people have suffered. They have been kept from their homes for over 3 years. I don't think he understands their love for Fukushima.
The environment minister is being sharply criticized by Fukushima residents as well as opposition parties.
Gunter is with us. He is with BeyondNuclear.org, just this absolutely brilliant website that keeps us up to date on what's going on with things all over the world. He's the director of the Reactor Oversight Project at Beyond Nuclear. The Twitter, of course, at Beyond Nuclear. Paul, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thank you again, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. It's been a while since we've done a story on Fukushima. Fukushima is still melted and melting down. It is still dumping radiation every single day. It has not let up. Just the news coverage has, and I don't want it to let it go below the radar screen. So please give us an update.
Well, right now we've got 4 reactors that are destroyed, and the problem is that current news is that the Tokyo Electric Power Company, using Japanese government money, is trying to build a 1-mile perimeter around the 4 reactors that are destroyed, and to sink about 1,590 90 feet long pipes into the ground, fill it with refrigerant, and then freeze an ice wall around these damaged reactors so that groundwater flowing off of the mountains behind the reactor wreckage doesn't flow into this site and create more contaminated water. They've already got about 400 million gallons of contaminated water a day just from trying to keep these reactors cool. And more water flowing in, then clean water that gets contaminated. You know, they've got a real sorcerer's apprentice kind of situation going on there where they're being flooded and flooding the Pacific with contaminated radioactive water.
Right. But if they stop flooding the Pacific with contaminated radioactive water, well, you know, they've got to be continuously pouring water over these melted reactor cores to keep them from really going China syndrome. So, and that's going to produce contaminated water because the fuel rods are all, not all melted, but many of them. And so what are they going to do with all this contaminated water if they don't let it flow into the Pacific?
Well, the idea is of this ice wall is to divert just a fraction of the water that's coming into that site. And so the ice wall will, you know, this is an unprecedented operation. They usually use this kind of technology for short-term freezing around underground, under bodies of water so they can drill tunnels. And but, you know, that's only temporary. We're talking decades of trying to keep this process operational.
Are they using like liquid nitrogen or something to freeze that? I mean, how
it's your typical refrigerant. They're going to get this, you know, the idea is to get the water to freeze at around 22 below zero Fahrenheit. And as the water contacts this refrigerated wall, it will freeze and, you know, down to the bedrock. That's the idea. But, you know, they've got water constantly pouring over these reactor cores. There's 3 of them that are melted. And that water is going to have to, the idea is that it's going to be treated through a giant filtration system right now that basically just pumps all this water into more than 1,500 giant tanks. They've had this enlarging tank farm there on the site, and they're hopeful that they're going to be able to treat that water. But, you know, this operation's been breaking down constantly since they've initiated it. So, you know, this is really a new concept on the movie Frozen that they're trying to, you know, concoct right now.
It's not funny though.
The prospect of fighting this is going to be daunting.
Oh yeah, and it's going to have to last for decades or centuries. And Paul, how much of this radiation is reaching the United States?
Well, we're only now beginning to see the very front edge of the plume coming around the northern Pacific, past Alaska and Washington and Oregon. You know, monitoring networks are still going up right now. You know, basically what we've got going right now at best is computer models. They're now beginning to try to set up actual monitoring of kelp and fish. But the problem is that the U.S. government is still not getting behind this operation for monitoring for the radioactive plume, and it's largely money from academic institutions.
I can tell you, I lived in Germany. We moved to Germany the week after Chernobyl melted down, and their standard for radiation in milk was 5 becquerels per liter. They raised it up to 50, then they raised it to 500, then they raised it, I think, again to 1,000. And they pretty much, there was just, there was a blackout on news coverage about radiation. I had one of these little Geiger counters, and I'd walk through the supermarket, and there were some things like mushrooms that would just trip the thing. It would just go brrrr, like that. Which used to horribly embarrass my wife. But it's like every country, it seems, wants to just bury this information. Anyhow, Paul Gunter, you can read all about it over at beyondnuclear.org. Paul, thanks so much for the great work you're doing.
Year since a devastating earthquake and tsunami hit Japan, crippling the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Workers there are still trying to figure out how to clean up the mess. Now, as News 13's Lizzie Mitri shows us, that's where New Mexico is coming into play.
This is a major humanitarian crisis.
Many people were displaced because of this.
It's been more than 3 years since a tsunami crashed through Fukushima, Japan, taking with it cars, houses, power lines, and eventually causing the meltdown of 3 nuclear reactors. About 5,900 miles away in New Mexico, Los Alamos National Lab researchers were working on this.
These little tubes have wires running down the middle.
Technology they now believe may show Japanese nuclear power plant workers exactly how bad the failed reactors are on the inside.
They're much too radioactive to go in and look at things.
Instead, a device like this will send particles through the damaged reactor cores. When the particles pass through things that could make up a nuclear threat, like lead, plutonium, or uranium, they scatter, helping create a 3D image of what things look like on the inside, so plant workers can better prepare for the cleanup.
They plan to clean up this reactor for something on the order of 40 years. And they're going to have to build special machines and robots to go in and pick the fuel out and put it away, dispose of it in some sensible fashion.
Lanel is working with Toshiba as it creates detectors like these on a much larger scale, the size of billboards. It's hoping to use them to inspect the first reactor next year. Liz Amitri, KRQE News 13.
Lanel first started developing this technology after 9/11 to prevent nuclear threats. It allows the U.S. to scan incoming cargo for radioactive material.
Promoting tourism is part of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's growth strategy, and the government has decided to try to double the number of foreign visitors by the year 2020. That's when Tokyo hosts the Summer Olympic Games. Relevant cabinet ministers put together an action plan to attract 20 million visitors a year.
Japan welcomed a record 10 million people from overseas last year, but the number falls far short of our goal to become a major tourism country.
The plan includes easing visa requirements for tourists from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Last year, the government took similar steps for visitors from Thailand and Malaysia. The plan also calls for doubling the number of tax-free shops to more than 10,000. The government will also allow wealthy tourists to stay in the country for up to 1 year, starting next
Seeing changes in Japan's trade data. Yuko Fukushima has more from our business desk. Give us the details, Yuko.
Yeah, Catherine, well, May trade data shows both imports and exports were down for the first time in more than a year. And taking a look at the detail of that data, Japan recorded its 23rd straight monthly trade deficit in May, but the deficit shrank for a second month due to falling imports. Finance Ministry officials say preliminary figures show the trade balance for May was $8.9 billion in the red. Exports fell to $54.8 billion. That's down 2.7% in yen terms from the same month a year ago. It's the first drop in 15 months. One reason exports declined was a slide in shipments of light oil and other fuels to Australia. Automakers also shipped fewer vehicles to the United States. Imports dropped 3.6% to $63.7 billion. That's the first time in 19 months imports have fallen. A decline in mobile phone imports from China and the reduced impact of the weaker yen caused imports to slide. The 23-month deficit streak is the longest since comparable data became available in 1979.
Airline managers in Japan are looking into the sky and they're seeing a bit of a hole. There are about 5,700 pilots certified to fly commercial aircraft, but many are in their 40s and will retire around 2030. With growing demand, airlines say they'll need another 3,000 pilots by then. Some educators are taking steps to fill the gap. NHK World's Akiko Okamoto explains.
Planes take off one after another at airports across Japan. But in the last few months, low-cost carriers have had to cancel hundreds of flights due to pilots calling in sick or resigning. The shortage of pilots in Japan has become a serious problem for the airlines. Some educators are stepping in to help train new pilots. In April, this university in southwestern Japan started offering a flight training course. Former airline captains and trainers were hired to teach.
We believe training new pilots in Japan is an urgent issue. We are very excited to have made a great start as the timing is good.
10 aspiring pilots aged between 18 to 30 were admitted to the school. These students will start flying aircraft later this year.
I use airplane a lot with my family, travel around in Japan. So I like flying airplanes, so I want to be a pilot.
I want to become the world's safest pilot and wow my passengers.
75% of pilots in Japan are either trained by the nation's top 2 airlines or are graduates of a government-funded aviation college. While people in the U.S. and Britain have hundreds of training schools to choose from, Japan only has about 20.
Okinawa is one place that's attracting trainee pilots. This company here has begun offering courses that are more affordable and faster. Students can obtain a pilot's license in just 14 months.
At this training facility, students obtain part of their pilot's license in the U.S. The institution installed flight simulators certified by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. These U.S.-made simulators help students get accustomed to the American testing system. The total fees here start about $110,000. That's almost half as much students pay at other facilities in Japan.
I can cut expenses by using a simulator and experience emergency situations. I can't do that on real aircraft.
There are 20 students in the program right now. But over the next few years, the people who run it hope that the number will rise to about 100.
I'm looking for probably about 5 schools in entire Japan. We have a lot of demands for those folks who want to fly in the simulator in the Tokyo area, the Hokkaido area.
Aviation specialists say as well as training more pilots, schools need to ensure the high quality of each trainee.
I think the government needs to work together with airlines, training facilities and universities to ensure there is a standard level of training. We need to ensure each school is at the same level.
Kobayashi says in the short term, airline managers should consider hiring more people from abroad. And government officials have decided to allow pilots who've left the self-defense forces to work for the airlines. They hope that will help them solve a problem that's just taken off.
80,000 people in northeastern Japan know what it is like to be uprooted. The government ordered them to evacuate their homes in 2011 because of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. Officials monitored decontamination efforts and judged that part of the zone was habitable. Then this April, they lifted the order allowing residents to return. Some people went home. NHK World's Junior Tsumoto found out how they're trying to rebuild their community.
Nobody had seen this for 3 years. The kids came back to a school that stood empty after the nuclear accident. This part of the Miyakoji district is 20 kilometers from the plant. It's the first place government officials lifted their evacuation order. But only half the residents returned. Some people are still worried about radiation, even though the government says the area is habitable. They also say the area is inconvenient. There aren't enough shops and hospitals in the district. Municipal leaders are trying to entice people back. They built temporary shops. They also launched a taxi service for residents who don't have their own wheels. Residents can use it to see a doctor or go shopping with a discounted fare. Still, some residents worry the community could disappear. Hisayo Imaizumi is trying to keep it going. She and her family came home as soon as they were allowed. They had to move 5 times as evacuees, but they never forgot their hometown.
毎日楽しいよね。
We are happy every day. It was good we returned soon.
Knowing only half the residents have returned, Imaizumi decided to create a place where everyone can get together. A traditional house her family owns was the ideal location. She remodeled it as a cafe. Imaizumi was born and raised in the house. She remembers the 150-year-old house was always full with many people visiting. Her wedding ceremony was held there too.
This place gives my life meaning. I was born and raised here. I can't think of living anywhere else. Hard times, sad times, happy times, I've had them all. I can't think of living anywhere else. Hard times, sad times, happy times, I've had them all here.
She hopes this house will be a place for people with fewer neighbors who tend to be isolated. Imaizumi opened her cafe earlier this month. Residents came to help her celebrate. So did neighbors who haven't moved back. Imaizumi is serving lunch in the cafe and organizing craft classes for residents.
I'm so happy I can come here.
She knows rebuilding the community won't be easy, with so many people staying away.
I shouldn't hope for too much. People who want to come back should come, but I'm waiting.
Government officials have no concrete plans to lift their evacuation order from other parts of the area. Meanwhile, Imaizumi hopes her cafe will help transform her district into a place where people want to return. Junior Tsumoto, NHK World, Miyakoji, Fukushima.
After Chernobyl we finally hear all kinds of cancer went up the next year. Hard to interpret, says OPCS. Can't understand it, well here is a guess. Low-level isotopes from the Ukraine drifted to Wales on the wind and the rain. Rainfall is higher in Bangor than Kent. Cancer in Wales is up 30%. We're breathing strontium, locking it into the structure of cellular DNA. And each beat a decay in an occasional, rather mutational way. Kills us. Even New Labour can see what it means. Radioisotopes alter your genes. Ghosts of dead babies will give them no rest till the dosimetry's been reassessed. Wombling, strombling, Bangor to Kent, telling the news of the second event. Telling the story all and two scenes. A radioisotopes alter your genes. Nuclear establishment, castle of lies. Children are dying in front of your eyes. Born with no limbs, with two heads or no brain. Born to a life of incurable pain. Nuclear subsidies victims will pay, while you take a pension and tiptoe away. Don't reassure us, cause we always knew yours was a story too slick to be true. We're breathing strontium, locking it into the structure of cellular DNA. And each beat a decay in an occasional, rather mutational way. Kills us. Nobody's hiding these nuclear crooks. Government stooges aren't cooking the books. Only the mothers are guilty of crimes, bearing their children in nuclear times. Radioisotopes float around free, up in the atmosphere, up near the sea. So many diseases genetically linked. Strontium bombs will soon be extinct, cause we're breathing strontium, locking it into the structure of cellular DNA. And each beat a decay in an occasional, rather communal way kills us.
You are merely a few minutes older, but infinitely more knowledgeable than before.